I'm standing in my own living room with the phone hot in my palm when Lena looks me in the eye and says, bright as a blade, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words hit like ice water down the back of my neck. Special people. The sofa she's sitting on is the one I bought. The rug under her feet one I hauled home in the rain, and somewhere upstairs, a pale pink dress I chose for their wedding hangs quiet as a kept secret. I picture the new shoes beside it, their paper-stuffed toes pointing at nothing. For 3 years, I've wired $500 on the dot every month, filled their fridge when it hummed empty, slipped cash into Lena's hand with a mother's softness. My son, my only son, stares at the carpet like it can save him. Later, alone, I scroll and see what intimate looks like on a screen. Champagne flutes lifted, her parents pressed close to the bride and groom, siblings grinning, a white dress I helped pay for catching the noon light. I am a ghost in every photo, erased clean, except for the money glinting at the edges of everything. In the kitchen, the refrigerator kicks on with a low animal growl. I sit at the table where I have planned surprises and stretched grocery lists to feed 3, and I listen to the house settle. The phone is suddenly heavy again, heavier than 1,000 pounds of hope. I think of all the small ways I trained myself to be convenient, canceling hair appointments, turning vacations into errands, swallowing questions so no one had to taste them. I think of Max as a boy, jam on his cheek, arms looped around my neck, telling me I was the best mom in the world. I wonder when best mom translated into bank with a heartbeat. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes clink like cutlery. In the hall mirror, my face is the same one I've carried through decades of bills and birthdays, but something in the eyes has shifted. Harder light, steadier line. I set the phone down, not gently. The dress upstairs can hang a little longer. It understands patience. I open a drawer and pull out my checkbook, my bank statements, the neat stack of envelopes I keep for good news. The paper is cool against my fingertips. Numbers will tell me what my heart already knows. Tell me, if the person you raised called you not special enough to witness his vows, what would you do next? And if this story touches a nerve, share your thoughts below and stay with Roots and Secrets for the rest of what followed. Top of form. The week after those 4 poisoned words, my house felt like a stage set after the actors had left. Props in place, lights dimmed, but no pulse left. I folded laundry in silence, vacuumed in silence, even cooked in silence. Yet the silence was not peace. It was humiliation echoing off every wall, clinging to my skin like smoke. I avoided my closet because the pink dress still waited there, a mute witness to the lie of inclusion. It was never meant to be worn, only imagined. When the phone rang on the 7th day, I almost didn't answer. I recognized the number, but something in me, the old reflex of obligation, made me pick it up. Lena's voice spilled out, but it wasn't the smooth, triumphant tone from the wedding. It was raw, tight, cracking. "Renate, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressing. You forgot to make the transfer." Forgot. The word curdled in me. I had never once forgotten. 3 years of monthly wires, each one cutting another slice out of my savings. Every time I remembered. Every time I chose them over myself. And now, after I was deemed unworthy of a chair at my son's wedding, I was supposed to forget? I let her desperation hang in the air, and then I said, calm, colder than I knew I could be, "Didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" The silence that followed was thicker than any plea. I heard my own heart thump like a drum in a quiet church. She stammered, searching for footing. "Renate, I don't understand. We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me." Lies rolled from her tongue, sugar-dipped and hollow. I ended the call without another word. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the one where I had spread out birthday cakes, wrapped gifts, planned their anniversaries. Now it was a ledger. I laid down my bank statements, checkbook, the scraps of every transaction, and did the math that no one wanted me to do. $500 a month for rent, $18,000. Groceries, supplies, $7,000 more. Furniture, medical emergencies, birthday and Christmas gifts. A car loan, never repaid. An air conditioner that cooled a home I was not invited into. The pen scratched across the paper as I tallied everything. $33,400. My late husband's careful savings. My retirement cushion. Years of sacrifice turned into their comfort. The numbers stared back like a verdict. I thought of the nights I ate beans and rice so their fridge could be full. The vacations never taken. The theater tickets I tore in half. The dresses I hung back on racks because money needed to be elsewhere. Each canceled joy had added up to their leisure. By morning, I was no longer trembling. Something colder had set in, an iron vein of clarity. I showered, dressed, and drove to the bank, my car moving as if guided by muscle memory. The manager, Mr. Klein, looked up when I entered, surprise flickering across his face. He had seen me 100 times, always with the same request. Another transfer to Max and Lena. He had watched my account thin like winter branches. Mrs. Richter, he said kindly, what can I do for you today? I need to cancel the automatic transfers, I replied. And I want every measure taken to protect my accounts. From now on, no one else touches my money. He hesitated, concern genuine in his eyes. Are you sure? After so long? Did something happen? Yes, I said simply. I opened my eyes. As he slid the cancellation forms toward me, my phone buzzed again and again on the counter. Max, then Lena, then Max again. It was as if they had radar tuned to the danger of a drying stream. I turned the phone face down and signed. The pen moved smoothly, a sound sharper than any argument. For the first time in years, my money was mine. The relief was physical. I felt lighter, as if an invisible backpack had been unstrapped from my shoulders. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Klein said quietly as he handed me the receipts. For what it's worth, I hope you start thinking about yourself now. His words, from a man who barely knew me outside of bank slips, pierced deeper than any from my son in months. He saw me, not as a provider, not as an endless account, but as a person. When I walked out into the sunlight, the city noise didn't feel like chaos anymore. It sounded like freedom. But freedom, I would soon learn, does not come without backlash. That afternoon, when I returned home, 3 cars sat crooked in front of my house. My stomach twisted. I recognized Max's and Lena's, and a third, sleek, unfamiliar. Through the window, I saw shapes moving, shadows in my own home. My keys shook in my hand. Inside, the air was stale with tension. Max sat hunched on my sofa, head in hands. Lena paced like a caged animal, and at my dining table, a man in a gray suit flipped through my private papers as though they were his own. What is happening here? My voice carried farther than I expected. They all froze. Lena spoke first, her tone syrupy but strained. Renate, thank God you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher from a law firm. He's here to help with your situation. My situation? I asked. I'm perfectly fine. Max raised his eyes, his face the same I once kissed after nightmares, now hard with panic. Mom, the bank said you canceled everything. Mr. Klein told us you blocked our access. We don't understand why you do that. Mr. Fisher stepped forward, hand outstretched, voice professional and patronizing. Mrs. Richter, your children are concerned about your well-being. They asked me to review your finances. At your age, it's common to struggle with clarity. A power of attorney, just temporary, could help them manage things more smoothly. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I gathered my documents from the table, each page an invasion. These are my private papers. You had no right to touch them. Mom, Max pleaded, though the tone was more accusation than love. You've been acting strange. Not answering calls, shutting us out. We think you need help. Lena slid closer, her hand reaching for mine with counterfeit tenderness. Renate, sweetheart, loneliness can cause confusion. We just want to protect you. Confusion. The word rang in my ears like an alarm. It was their script, their tactic. If money was denied, question the mind. I am not confused, I said, my voice steady as stone. I am clearer than I have been in years, and all of you are going to leave my house. Now. For a moment, the silence was heavy, their expressions naked with shock. Then Mr. Fisher tried again, softer, smoother. Mrs. Richter, they have a right to intervene if your decisions are irrational. Please, don't make this harder. I laughed, a sound raw and sharp, even to my own ears. Irrational? To decide my money belongs to me? To end years of financing two grown adults? If that's irrational, then sanity is overrated. Lena's mask cracked. She spat the truth out with venom. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We're just speeding up the process. The words hung between us like a noose. I pointed to the door. Out! All three of you! Get out of my house! Max rose, his face twisted in that old child's pout I once gave into. Mom, you can't just cut us off. The rent, the car payments, the credit cards, you co-signed. You have obligations. Obligations? My voice rose for the first time in years. I raised you. I fed you. I gave you everything. But I do not owe you my life. Or my money. Not anymore. Mr. Fisher placed a folder on the table, his last card. This power of attorney could ease the transition, just until you feel better. I lifted it, unopened, and tossed it into the trash. The only transition happening here is yours to the front door. Lena's eyes burned as tears threatened, but never softened. You can't do this to us. We made plans. We counted on you. Counted on my money, I corrected. Not my well-being, not my happiness, just my money. And that era is finished. They shuffled to the door, dignity in tatters. Max paused at the threshold, his voice low and shaking with rage. This is going to end badly for you. You'll be alone when you need us most. I looked at him, my only son, and answered with the calm truth. I am already alone. The difference is, now it's by choice, not by your neglect. When the door shut, silence rushed in again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't humiliation. It was freedom's first breath. The morning after I pushed them out of my house, I woke to the sharp click of the radiator. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, catching the stack of canceled transfer slips like trophies. For once, the first thought in my head wasn't Max or Lena. It was coffee. Just coffee, for me, made strong and bitter, with no rush to leave the house for anyone else's emergency. I sat in my robe, sipping, staring at the neat rows of numbers I had calculated the night before. 33,400. I whispered it aloud, as if naming the sum could drain its power. But instead, the number fueled me. It was proof, not regret. Proof that my generosity had been real, and proof that their love had been counterfeit. By 10 o'clock, the phone began its daily assault. Max first, then Lena, alternating like tag team fighters. I let it ring. When a text buzzed through, Mom, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it without a pause. For years, I had been at their beck and call. Now silence was my answer. At 2 in the afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I left the house for no reason at all. I walked through the park where Max had once raced down slides and shouted for me to watch. I remembered that little boy's arms around my neck, sticky with jam, calling me the best mom in the world. I wanted to believe that boy still existed inside the man, but maybe that boy had grown into someone who saw me only as an ATM. On Main Street, I stopped in front of the bank. Mr. Klein waved through the glass, and I felt a strange swell of pride. He had seen me reclaim myself. That was enough. I walked past the branch and kept going until the ache in my legs reminded me I was alive, not depleted. When I returned home, the phone was flashing with missed calls. I ignored them. For the first time in years, the center of my day wasn't their needs. It was mine. The next morning, a knock rattled the door. When I looked through the glass, 3 cars lined the curb again. Max's, Lena's, and one unfamiliar. My stomach clenched. I'd given them keys once, believing trust was love. No more. I opened the door carefully. Inside stood Max, Lena, and a man I didn't know, already rummaging through my papers. Fury surged. I reclaimed my documents, threw their proposed power of attorney in the trash, and told them all to leave. My voice did not tremble. It rang out like steel. That was the moment everything shifted. The first real no. They stormed out, but their words clung like smoke. This will end badly for you. You'll be alone. That night, alone in my living room, I thought about what alone really meant. For years, my loneliness had been surrounded by people who drained me. Now solitude felt cleaner, almost tender. I made tea, set my papers in order, and slept with the certainty that I had drawn my first true boundary. But battles don't end with one door slammed. The following afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I should have let it pass, but curiosity won. Lena's voice slid through, sweetened with false honey. Renate, please don't hang up. Let's talk like civilized adults. Max and I want to make it up to you. How about a special dinner at your house? Just us. We'll cook together. Celebrate properly. I almost laughed at the brazenness. Lena, how much rent do you owe right now? Silence, then a cough. 2 months. 1,000 total, but that's not why I'm calling. We miss you, truly. You miss me or my money? Both, she admitted, her honesty as manipulative as her lies. You are important to us. If I'm so important, why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I never important enough to get a call that doesn't ask for money? The silence stretched, brittle and damning. Lena, I said finally, for 3 years, you treated me like an ATM with feelings. You humiliated me, excluded me, and used me. Now that the account is closed, suddenly you discover love? No. You made your choice when you said I wasn't special enough. Now I'm making mine. I hung up. This time, I didn't cry. I turned off the phone entirely, like cutting a wire to a machine that had long controlled me. That afternoon, I walked to the beauty salon I had neglected for over a year. Cynthia, my stylist, gasped when she saw me. Mrs. Richter, I thought you'd forgotten us. I didn't forget, I said. I just forgot that I deserved to be cared for too. I sat under the warm lights, the smell of hair dye sharp and sweet, the hum of dryers around me like gentle background music. Cynthia washed, cut, colored, painted my nails. I let her fuss over me. For once, I didn't think about whether Max needed gas money or Lena wanted new shoes. When the mirror revealed my reflection, Cynthia smiled. You look beautiful, but more than that, you look free. Did something good happen? Yes, I answered. I finally learned to say no. The next day, as if summoned by the universe, a knock came at the door. An older woman stood on my porch, holding a mug. Mrs. Richter? I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've never spoken much, but yesterday I heard shouting. I was worried. Are you all right? Her sincerity cut straight through me. A stranger cared more about my well-being than my own son. Come in, I said softly. I'll make us coffee. There's a story you won't believe. I told her everything. The secret wedding, the financial drain, the lawyer at my table, the phone calls. She listened without interruption, her eyes glistening. Mrs. Richter, she said finally, you did the right thing. 5 years ago, I went through something similar with my daughter. I financed her life until I realized she only called when she needed money. When I cut her off, she raged, blackmailed me emotionally. But 6 months later, she came back to apologize. Now we have a real relationship, built on love, not cash. Her story wrapped around me like a blanket. Do you think Max and Lena will ever understand? I asked. Maybe, maybe not. But that's no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility is to live your own life. That night, I went to bed lighter, not weighed down by their rent, their bills, their whims. For the first time in 3 years, I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that heals. Morning brought resolve. I visited Robert's grave, something I had put off for months. The cemetery was still, the air cool. His stone was weathered, the flowers withered. I sat on the grass, brushing dirt from his name, and whispered as if he were beside me. Robert, I think I lost myself after you left. I poured everything into Max, hoping he wouldn't feel the absence of a father. But in trying to be everything for him, I forgot to be someone for myself. The wind rustled the leaves as if answering. I replaced the flowers, cleaned the stone, and promised him, and myself, that I would not lose the last years of my life to manipulation. When I stood to leave, I felt stronger, anchored by something deeper than anger. It wasn't just about cutting off the money. It was about reclaiming dignity, the part of me that had been buried under years of compliance. Back at home, I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the same table that had once been a silent witness to my humiliation. But now, it was a witness to my rebirth. The numbers no longer haunted me. They testified. 33,400 had bought me clarity. I looked at the silent phone, lying face down, and realized it no longer controlled me. I controlled it. The first no had been spoken. The real war had begun, not with fists or shouting, but with boundaries and silence. And for the first time in my life, the word no tasted like freedom. The peace I had carved for myself lasted only a handful of days before their retaliation arrived, swift and ruthless. I had just finished sweeping the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Through the curtains, I saw Max's car, Lena's car, and another sedan I didn't recognize. My stomach clenched, but I steadied my breath. When I opened the door, they were already inside. Max slumped on the sofa, Lena pacing, and a stranger in a gray suit spreading my papers across the dining table as if they were public property. His introduction was practiced. I'm Mr. Fisher, a family attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being. I didn't shake his hand. I gathered my documents with deliberate slowness, holding each page as if reclaiming pieces of myself. These are mine. You have no right to touch them. Lena stepped forward, her hand reaching for mine with that syrupy tenderness she reserved for manipulation. Renate, we're worried. At your age, confusion is normal. We just want to protect you. The word confusion cut sharper than a knife. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were laying the groundwork to declare me incompetent. My son stood, his face a blend of panic and entitlement. Mom, you canceled everything without warning. You don't answer our calls. You're not acting rational. I laughed, a sound I hardly recognized in my own throat. Rational? For years I paid rent that wasn't mine, bought food I didn't eat, financed a life I wasn't invited to. And now, because I've finally stopped, you call it confusion? Lena's mask cracked. Her voice dropped its sugar. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We're just speeding it up. That was the naked truth. To them, I was already gone. Just an inheritance walking around on tired legs. I pointed at the door. Out! All of you! Leave! They shuffled toward the exit, Mr. Fisher stuffing his folder with brisk irritation. Max turned at the threshold, eyes blazing. This will end badly for you, Mom. You'll be alone when you need us most. I am already alone, I replied, but now it's by choice, not neglect. The door slammed. Silence filled the room, but it was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. The storm came sooner than I expected. A week later, while I was at the hardware store choosing new locks, Lena's voice returned on the phone, calling from an unfamiliar number. Renate, please. Let's have a special dinner. Just us. We'll make it right. I cut her down with one question. How much rent do you owe? The silence told me everything. Their peace offering was just another strategy to pry open my wallet. I hung up, blocked the number, and walked back to the counter where Ethan, the hardware man's son, was explaining surveillance systems. Install everything, I told him. Best quality, price is no issue. By the next morning, my home was transformed. New locks on every door, cameras at each entry point. For the first time in years, my security was mine. But Max and Lena weren't finished. That evening, I pulled into my driveway and saw 3 cars parked at the curb again. Shadows moved inside my house. My pulse hammered. They had keys. Old keys I had once given them in trust. I gripped the steering wheel, refusing to step into my own home until I had help. Mr. Weber? I said when my lawyer answered. They're inside again. Stay in the car. I'll call the police. Within minutes, flashing lights painted the street. Officers walked into my home, voices firm. I saw Max gesticulating wildly, Lena crying in practiced sobs, Mr. Fisher protesting with legal jargon. When the police escorted them out, Max shouted at me across the yard. You can't call the cops on your own son. Family doesn't break into my home. Family doesn't try to steal my dignity, I said. Lena screamed from the street. You'll pay for this! You owe us everything you promised! Mr. Weber stepped in, his voice sharp. Any future communication goes through my office. Any further trespass will strengthen the restraining order. The patrol cars pulled away with them trailing behind, their headlights shrinking to nothing. For the first time, I felt like I had allies. But the next morning, a new assault arrived. A woman in a neat blazer, folder in hand, rang my doorbell. She introduced herself as a social worker. We've had a report that you may be at risk. We need to conduct a wellness check. I recognized the script instantly. Lena's handiwork, cloaked in bureaucracy. The phrases were designed to make me sound delusional. Financial changes, paranoia, isolation. I'd like my lawyer present, I said firmly. This isn't legal, ma'am. If you have nothing to hide, that phrase lit fire in my chest. Abusers love that line. I called Mr. Weber anyway, and within 20 minutes he was at my door. He spread the documentation across the table. 3 years of transfers, $33,400, the manipulations, the trespasses. The social worker's confidence drained as she read. Mrs. Richter, she said finally, I see no grounds for intervention. I'll be closing this case. When she left, I sagged into my chair, relief flooding me. But Mr. Weber's warning was clear. This will escalate. They may file for guardianship in court. Prepare yourself. The words chilled me. Guardianship would mean legal control over my money, my choices, my very life. That night, Eleanor came by with a mug of coffee. I heard the commotion again, she said. Are you all right? I told her everything. The social worker, the threats, the lawyer. Her eyes filled with the same sorrow I had seen in my own mirror. Renate, she said softly, you've already done the hardest part. You said no. Now you must keep saying it, even when they come with thicker masks. I nodded, clutching the mug. For a moment, I let myself imagine a life with no knocks, no desperate calls, no accusations of confusion. Just mornings with coffee, afternoons with friends, evenings with peace. But dreams, like locks, must be defended. Days later, the summons came. A thick envelope slid under my door. A formal petition for guardianship. Max and Lena were suing to have me declared incompetent. My blood ran cold as I read the words. They were no longer just manipulating. They were weaponizing the law. I phoned Diana in Chicago, my sister, my last link to family that felt like family. Renate, she said after I poured it all out, do you see now? They will risk your dignity, your peace, even your freedom, for money. This is who they are. Stop hoping they'll change. Protect yourself. Her words were painful, but true. For the first time, I grieved not just my money, but the son I had lost years before without realizing it. That night I wept, not in humiliation, but in mourning. I mourned the boy with jam on his cheek who once called me the best mom in the world. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man who would drag his own mother into court for a bank account. And as the tears slowed, something else stirred. Steel-hard determination. They would not strip me of money, or of dignity, or of freedom. Not while I could still speak. Not while I could still fight. The war had officially begun. The petition was set for hearing in 3 weeks. I marked the date on my calendar in red ink, each number glaring at me every morning. Fear hovered, but beneath it ran something steadier, a current of resolve. If they wanted war, I would not bring tears. I would bring proof. Mr. Weber and I spent hours building the defense. He collected every transfer slip, every bank statement, every receipt of furniture, car payments, medical emergencies, all the invisible threads I had woven into their lives. $33,400, documented down to the cent. "They will argue confusion," Mr. Weber said, leaning across my dining table. "We will counter with clarity. Dr. Moore will testify to your mental strength. Your friends will testify to your independence. Every page of these records is a shield." I nodded. For once, the table that had witnessed my humiliation now bore weapons of truth. When the trial began, the courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and polish, the way institutions often do. I walked in wearing a black suit, polished shoes, hair freshly trimmed by Cynthia. My hands trembled, but not with weakness, with the weight of all I was about to reclaim. Max and Lena were already there. He in a stiff suit, she in black, as if mourning, her eyes sharp as glass. Their lawyer, tall and silver-haired, radiated confidence. When Lena's gaze met mine, it carried no warmth, only calculation. The proceedings opened with their attorney's statement. His words rolled out heavy and practiced. "Your Honor, Mrs. Richter has shown alarming decline, cutting off financial support irrationally, installing unnecessary security systems out of paranoia, isolating herself under the influence of strangers. We ask the court to protect her through guardianship." Every syllable twisted my choices into symptoms, my silence into instability, my boundaries into delusion. Then they paraded their witnesses. Lena went first, her voice trembling on cue. She described how I had changed, how I lashed out, how I isolated myself from the family that loved me. "Renate was like a second mother to me," she sobbed. "Seeing her mental decline has been devastating." I clenched my jaw. Lies dressed as grief. When Mr. Weber cross-examined, his questions cut clean. "Mrs. Schuster, when was the last time you called my client without requesting money?" Lena blinked. "We talked about many things." "Specific date, please," she faltered. "I can't remember." "Is it true you and your husband married without inviting her?" "It was a very small ceremony." "Did you not tell her you only invited special people?" Her face flushed crimson. "Those words were taken out of context." "What context makes them acceptable?" Weber pressed. She had no answer. Max followed, solemn, swearing to tell the truth. My heart cracked seeing him raise his hand, the same hand I once held to cross streets. He claimed I was erratic, manipulated by outsiders. Weber's cross-examination sliced through. "Mr. Richter, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?" "I don't know the exact amount." "Would $33,400 sound correct?" "Maybe. She's always been generous." "How many times have you visited her without asking for money?" The silence was deafening. "Is it true you entered her home without permission?" "We were worried." "Is it true you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney?" "We only wanted to help manage Do you, at 35 years old, require your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent?" His lips pressed shut. No answer. Their neighbor, Mr. Davis, testified next, claiming I acted strangely, installing cameras, hosting strangers, raising my voice. But under questioning, he admitted he never spoke to me, only observed from across the street. His testimony collapsed like damp paper. Finally, Dr. Lehman, their chosen psychiatrist, said my refusal of evaluation indicated decline. But Weber countered with Dr. Moore's report, pages of flawless cognitive tests. The courtroom began to shift, their narrative frayed. Then it was our turn. Mr. Green, the pharmacist, confessed he had been misled by Lena into signing a distorted statement. Dr. Moore testified that my mental faculties were not only intact, but strong for my age. Mr. Summer described my decisiveness at the hardware store, my clarity in canceling the transfers. Then my allies spoke. Eleanor, her hands folded steady, told the court, "I have spent hours with Mrs. Richter. She is lucid, independent, and clear. She has simply drawn boundaries against exploitation." Cynthia testified that when I returned to the salon, I was vibrant, engaged, focused. Maria and Alfreda spoke of our evenings together, laughter and conversation untainted by confusion. Their words built a wall around me, brick by brick. Finally, I walked to the stand. My knees quivered, but my back stayed straight. Mr. Weber guided me gently. "Mrs. Richter, why did you end financial support?" "Because I realized what I was receiving was not love," I said, voice ringing through the chamber. "It was a commercial transaction disguised as family. My money was welcome. I was not. Do you regret your decision?" "I regret only that it took me so long." Max's lawyer tried to rattle me, but I answered every question with precision. When he suggested I was manipulated by friends, I replied, "For the first time in years, my relationships are based on respect, not on what I can pay." The judge listened, impassive, pen scratching notes. After closing arguments, Judge Miller retired to deliberate. 2 hours stretched into an eternity. I sat in silence, hands folded, heart pounding. Around me, the air hummed with tension. When he returned, his voice was steady. "After reviewing all evidence, it is clear Mrs. Richter is fully competent. Professional evaluations confirm her cognitive health. Financial decisions made by her, though painful to her family, are rational and within her rights. The court denies the petition for guardianship." The gavel struck like thunder. I had won. I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding. Beside me, Weber gave a small nod. Across the aisle, Lena's face twisted into pure hatred, Max's into something like regret, but too faint, too late. That night, Eleanor and my friends gathered at my house. We toasted with cheap wine that tasted like victory. "To freedom," Alfreda said, her voice cracked with age but fierce. "You didn't just win a case, you won your life back." They clapped, laughed, filled the room with warmth. For once, the laughter didn't sting, it healed. Later, alone in bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The trial was over, but the war inside me wasn't. I had defended my dignity, but I had buried something too. The illusion of the son I once believed I had. I whispered into the dark, as if Robert could hear. "He's gone, isn't he? Or maybe he was never the boy I thought. But I'm still here, and I'm free." The silence answered, heavy yet kind. The next morning, I woke not to dread, but to possibility. For the first time in years, the day ahead was mine alone. I made coffee, opened the curtains wide, and let sunlight flood the room. The war had been fought in court, but the true victory was quieter. The right to breathe without permission, to spend without guilt, to live without shackles. Max and Lena had lost not just a case. They had lost access to me, to my money, to the control they believed eternal. And in that loss, I found myself again. After the trial, the days that followed felt unreal, as if my house had been lifted out of storm clouds and set back on solid ground. I woke each morning to the sound of sparrows outside the kitchen window, not the shrill ring of a phone demanding rent money. I brewed coffee without dread, poured it into my favorite blue mug, and sat at the same kitchen table that once bore my tears. Now it held maps of possibility. I began to plan, not for them, but for me. I called Diana, my sister in Chicago, and we talked not about bills or crises, but about a trip we might take together. I met Eleanor for walks in the park, both of us wrapped in scarves against the autumn wind, laughing like girls who had survived something larger than themselves. For the first time in decades, I had weekends with no obligations. I visited the cemetery more often, laying fresh flowers at Robert's grave, telling him about my days. I wanted him to know that even though I had stumbled into years of blindness, I had finally opened my eyes. 3 months later, I sold the house that had become a battlefield. I moved into a sunlit apartment downtown, close enough to walk to the market, the library, the art center. With half of my savings, I donated to organizations that protect the elderly from abuse, because I now understood how common my story was. With the other half, I bought back the life I had postponed: art classes, a trip to Europe, afternoons of painting flowers on canvas instead of calculating rent for someone else's home. Max and Lena faded from my daily existence. Occasionally, I heard whispers, how they had moved into a smaller apartment, how Lena had taken a job for the first time in years. Perhaps they were learning the lesson my generosity never taught: the value of honest work and independence. And if they never learned, that was no longer my burden. At night, from the balcony of my new apartment, I would sit with a glass of wine and look at the stars. They seemed brighter now, or perhaps I was finally seeing them clearly. For so long, I had believed love could be bought, that sacrifice would earn respect, that patience would eventually be rewarded with affection. But true love cannot be purchased, respect cannot be begged, dignity cannot be surrendered for the promise of belonging. I understood that my greatest mistake had not been giving money, it had been giving away myself. And the greatest victory was not winning in court, but winning back my own life. Family, I realized, is not defined by blood or by claims of inheritance. Family is the neighbor who brings coffee because she hears shouting through your walls. Family is the sister who tells you the truth even when it hurts. Family is the circle of friends who lift you up and remind you that you are more than a wallet with a heartbeat. As I leaned on the balcony rail, wind tangling through my hair, I whispered the words I wished I had learned years earlier. Love without respect is only an echo, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renate Richter. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I must love and protect is myself. If this story has touched something inside you, share your thoughts with me. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever faced a moment where you had to reclaim your dignity. And if you want more stories of courage and truth, join us here at Roots and Secrets. Your voice matters, and together, we make sure no one has to fight these battles alone. Bottom of form.